Hi, my name is Debbie, and I am obsessed with all things to do with ultrasound. I'm an empty nester who has spent the last 28 years scanning in all different kinds of situations: clinics, hospitals, point of service, emergency departments, private offices, echovascular, general, high-risk OB, and want to dive down deep into all things to do with technology, techniques, and transformation. It's time we take ultrasound to the next level. Think of this like your little power boost on your commute to all things ultrasound, along your way to the thing that we call work. So pull up a seat, make sure you're comfy, and be ready to be challenged and encouraged as we learn it's all about the frequency. Okay, today I'd like to talk about advanced maternal age. Where did it come from? How did we come up with the number 35? Where did this all come about? So many years ago, when amniocentesis was just being performed, they didn't use ultrasound guidance. It was a blind stick. They kind of felt around, felt for a pocket of fluid, and stuck. So the risk of rupturing the membranes, causing infection, sticking the baby, sticking a piece of cord, anything like that was pretty high. I think they used to quote like 1 in 250, something of that nature. I think now the risk for a mom of 35 is like 1 in 400. So let's pretend that the risk of doing the procedure without ultrasound guidance was 1 in 400. I think it was closer to 250 or something of that nature, but I don't have those exact numbers. So if the risk was 1 in 400 and the age risk was 1 in 400, that's where the lines crossed on the graph. That was the dot that made the age of 35 advanced maternal age. Now, I agree, advanced maternal age sounds not very polite, for lack of a better way to say it. But it was the risk of having a baby at that age versus the risk of doing the procedure and getting the information. They were the same. Therefore, that made that advanced maternal age. Now, in today's world, an amniocentesis is always performed with an ultrasound guidance. And the risk of having a complication is really more like 1 in 1,000 for an adverse complication of pregnancy. However, it's interesting, in my own personal experiences, I've witnessed doctors still giving like the risk of 1 in 500 risk for complications, which is interesting, right? It's still a very low risk. So when I did a little research and was coming up with some hard numbers, I came across a study by Solomon and his colleagues Wolf, Obido, and Adkolekar. And they come up with risk for both amnio and CVS with less than 1%. Here are some of the numbers. They did an electronic search, yielded 2,943 potential citations, from which 12 controlled studies for amniocentesis and 7 for CVS were selected for inclusion in the systematic review. A total of 580 miscarriages occurred following 63,723 amniocentesis procedures, resulting in a weighted risk of pregnancy loss of 0.91%. In the control group, there were 1,726 miscarriages in 330,469 pregnancies with a loss rate of 0.58%. The weighted procedure-related risk of miscarriage following amniocentesis was then 0.30%. A total of 163 miscarriages occurred following 13,011 CVS procedures, resulting in a risk of pregnancy loss of 1.39%. In the control group, there was 1,946 miscarriages in 232,680 pregnancies with a loss rate of 1.23%. The weighted procedure-related risk of miscarriage following CVS was 0.20%. However, when the studies include only women with similar risk profiles for chromosomal abnormalities, in the intervention and control group were considered, the procedure-related risk for amniocentesis was 0.12%. And for CVS, it was 0.11%. So I think it's interesting to keep those numbers in our mind when doctors are performing amniocentesis at CVS. Although those numbers give great comfort in having a very low risk of miscarriage, there still was miscarriage. And I'm sure if you were one that had the miscarriage because of the result of the test, you would not feel it was very safe. However, in the result of the general population of this study, the risk for both amniocentesis and CVS were very low. All this to say that the risks are low in order to get good DNA information through an amniocentesis or a CVS. Now we have NIPT testing, non-invasive genetic testing, and that can be done as early as 10 weeks by a blood draw from the mother. So that's ultimately the most low risk for those three trisomies, 21, 13, and 18. So obviously that would be the preferred choice, but if more invasive testing is needed for other trisomies or other conditions, then the amniocentesis or the CVS are definitely report a low risk for getting that information, despite the age. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to connect with you. Thank you for tuning in to It's All About the Frequency podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Share it with a friend and remember to keep your frequency high.